She went from being a pampered city girl living a comfortable life to battling absolute poverty and family banishment overnight. But this isn't just a story about struggle. It's a story about love, about resilience, and about a secret marriage that built a thriving business empire when everyone else had given up. Welcome to True Love Diaries. Today's story was sent to us by Mim from Bangladesh. This is her story, shared exactly the way she told it to us. My name is Mim. I was born and raised in the bustling, fast-paced city of Dhaka. For as long as I could remember, my world was defined by concrete buildings, crowded streets, and the constant hum of traffic. The countryside was a foreign concept to me. My father, however, lived in our quiet ancestral village in Barisha, where he served as a respected local council member, a prominent community leader in the area. Because of my studies and the chaotic city life, I rarely visited. In fact, I had only been there once when I was a little child. Then came a particular Eid around 2013. My mother practically begged me, "Please, let's celebrate the holidays in the village this year. Let's spend it with your father and the local community." Seeing the hope in her eyes, I couldn't say no. Little did I know, this trip would change my life forever. Shortly after we arrived, our house was filled with the chaotic joy of a cousin's wedding. The first event was the traditional pre-wedding sunset ceremony, a vibrant celebration filled with music, laughter, and bright yellow hues. In the middle of the crowd, I suddenly felt eyes on me. I looked up and locked eyes with a young man. He was staring at me with an unmistakable intensity. We exchanged a few glances throughout the evening, but no words were spoken. I eventually went home, brushing it off as a fleeting moment. The next day was the main wedding reception. I was sitting quietly in a corner, watching the guests, when suddenly that same young man approached me. He looked a bit nervous, but determined. "Excuse me," he said softly. I looked up, slightly surprised. "Yes?" He pulled out his phone, a shy smile playing on his lips. "I actually have some pictures of you on my phone." I was completely taken aback. My eyebrows furrowed as I asked, "What do you mean? How did you get pictures of me?" He handed me the phone and explained. "Last night, during the ceremony, I was just taking random photos of the crowd. But later that night, when I was going through them, I realized you were in almost every frame. I accidentally took a whole gallery of just you." I looked at the screen. I had to admit, the photos were beautiful. But I couldn't just let an unfamiliar guy off the hook that easily. I put on a distant, sophisticated tone and said, "Well, they look nice. But how am I supposed to get these photos from you?" That was exactly the opening he was waiting for. "If you give me your phone number, I can send them right over." Before I could answer, a group of relatives walked up to us. Sensing the awkwardness, I simply said, "We'll talk later," and walked away, leaving him standing there, but he wasn't about to give up. His name was Rafat. A few minutes later, as I was walking through the courtyard, he managed to cross my path again. Without any hesitation, he started talking about himself. "You know," he said, "I am the only child of my parents." I smiled inwardly at his randomness, but kept a straight face. "Oh, really? That's a blessing. My dad is incredibly kind," he continued. "He listens to everything I say." "I see. That's good," I replied, nodding. He took a deep breath, looked into my eyes, and said, "I am actually a very simple, straightforward person." Amused by his brutal honesty, I replied again, "That's good to hear." Suddenly, his playful demeanor shifted into something more serious. "Can I tell you something?" "Go ahead," I said. "I really, really like you." The sudden confession caught me completely off guard. Gathering my composure, I replied a bit firmly, "Listen, I am really not interested in relationships right now. I don't want anyone in my life, and I honestly don't care for these things." His face fell slightly, but he respected my boundary. "Oh, I see. All right then. Just then, I saw my uncle approaching from a distance. Sensing it was time to leave, Rafat quickly walked away and got into a waiting car. The following day, while I was busy helping with the post-wedding cleanup, Rafat appeared out of nowhere again. He didn't say much this time. Instead, he gently pressed a folded piece of paper into my hand. "Please, just take this," he whispered. "What is this?" I asked, confused. Without answering, he turned around and vanished into the crowd. I unfolded the paper. It was a phone number. Coming from a big city, I should have been annoyed by this persistence. But there was something so painfully innocent and genuine about Rafat that piqued my curiosity. Later that evening, giving in to that curiosity, I dialed the number. The phone rang and a familiar voice answered. "Hello, peace be upon you." "And upon you be peace," I replied. I heard a deep sigh of relief from the other end. "I knew you would call. I've been staring at my phone waiting for this exact moment." Wanting to tease him a bit, I asked, "Oh, you knew? Do you even know who this is?" He laughed softly. "You're the community leader's daughter, aren't you?" "Yes, I am," I said, trying to sound strict. "But I only called because of the photos you promised. That's the only reason." Rafat pretended to be disappointed. "Oh, just for the photos? Not because of what I told you yesterday?" I smiled. "No, definitely not for that. Just the photos." We hung up shortly after, but that brief conversation changed everything. What started as an excuse to get a few wedding photographs slowly turned into daily phone calls. Without even realizing it, talking to Rafat became the highlight of my days, and a strange, beautiful warmth began to take over my heart. His words had an incredible charm. Rafat had this way of speaking so eloquently and beautifully that he could effortlessly touch anyone's heart. As we kept talking, I eventually found out that he was studying in Dhaka and lived in an area called Kalyanpur. Soon after, our village holidays came to an end and we headed back to the city. Because of my father's political position as a community leader, he spent most of his time back in the village, while my mother stayed with us in Dhaka to oversee our education. Stonked. Even after returning to the city, my connection with Rafat didn't fade at all. Instead, it grew stronger. Our conversations became endless. I found myself constantly yearning to hear his voice on the other end of the line. We would lose track of time completely, talking until 3 or 4 in the morning without even realizing it. Life felt like it was wrapped in a beautiful, magical haze. But this happiness didn't last long. Somehow, my father found out about us. He was an incredibly strict, hot-tempered man. The moment he discovered our relationship, he started shouting and furious arguments echoed through the house. The situation became so intensely volatile that I realized keeping in touch with Rafat was no longer an option. Left with no choice, I pulled myself away and stopped contacting him altogether. But Rafat wasn't someone who gave up easily. When I went completely silent, he took a friend along and traveled all the way from his neighborhood straight to the front of my college. Standing before me with eyes full of emotion, he pleaded, "Mim, please just give me 10 minutes. I just need to talk to you. I truly, deeply care about you." Seeing his desperation that day broke my heart. A wave of profound sadness washed over me because I knew the circumstances wouldn't even let me talk to him properly. After that encounter, we started speaking in secret, stealing just 2, 3, or 5 minutes a day over the phone. But it wasn't long before my mother caught on too. She called Rafat directly, screaming at him over the phone and issuing a chilling warning. She told him, "I will have you picked up right off the street. If you value your safety and want to keep yourself whole, stay away from my daughter and never speak to her again." Shaken by her threats, Rafat grew deeply worried. He sent me a message saying, "Mim, we need to meet up just once." He came to meet me right outside my tutoring center, speaking with the maturity of someone far beyond his years. Looking into my eyes, he said, "Listen, Mim, I am completely serious about you, but we have to be patient. I want to finish my master's degree properly first. Once I build my career, we will make our final decision and I will send a formal proposal to your family." His words brought a sense of calm to my restless heart. I reasoned that if he finished his education and secured a good position, my parents would eventually accept our relationship and everything would be fine. However, my mother's strictness was on a completely different level. She kept me under such rigid surveillance that if my tutoring class ended at 5 in the afternoon, I was expected to be at our front door by 5:05. If the clock ever struck 5:10, she would lose her mind. A harsh interrogation would begin instantly, demanding to know where I was during those extra 5 minutes and who I was with. He was under the suffocating discipline that I made a massive mistake one day. Driven by an overwhelming longing to see Rafat, I went to college but skipped my classes entirely just to spend time with him. While we were together, my mother's name suddenly flashed on my phone screen. With my heart pounding against my ribs, I answered the call. Her sharp voice pierced through the line, "Where are you right now?" Terrified of the consequences, I lied, "Mom, I'm in class right now. I'll call you back later." I hurriedly hung up the phone, but the tremor in my voice and my rush to hang up instantly triggered her suspicion. She wasn't the type to sit back and do nothing. She called my college administration directly. She demanded, "Please check if Mim came to college today. Look at the CCTV cameras and see if my daughter walked in." After reviewing the footage, the security staff informed her that I hadn't even entered the campus that day. Her suspicion turning into panic, she insisted, "Check their digital fingerprint attendance records then." Our college used biometric fingerprint scanning for entry, and the logs confirmed my absence. That was it. My mother completely lost her mind, fearing that her daughter had gone missing or that something terrible had happened. She immediately dialed my number again. The moment I picked up, she started screaming frantically, "Where on earth did you go? Tell me the truth. Just wait until you get home today. You have no idea what I'm going to do to you." Hearing her terrifying rage and screams over the phone, tears began to stream uncontrollably down my face. Paralyzed by fear, panic, and a breaking heart, my mind went completely blank. My entire body trembled at the thought that returning home might mean facing severe physical violence or something so awful I wouldn't be able to bear it. Feeling utterly helpless and weeping bitterly, I turned to Rafat and said, "Look, Rafat, I can't go home today. I am terrified." Hearing those words, Rafat panicked too. He grabbed my hands, trying desperately to calm me down. "Mim, don't lose your head," he urged. "If you don't go home today, things will get much worse. Everyone will think the absolute worst of us. Please, don't do something this reckless." By the time the clock struck 7 in the evening, my mother, completely out of options and consumed by panic, decided to call Rafat directly. She was crying hysterically over the phone. "Rafat, I can't find Mim anywhere," she sobbed. I shouted at her over the phone earlier today, "Are you in Dhaka right now? I heard you were studying there." Sensing the gravity of the situation, Rafat kept his composure and spoke in a calm, reassuring voice. "Yes, Auntie, I am in Dhaka. Actually, I met up with Mim a little while ago and she is with me right now. Please don't worry at all. I will personally bring her back home." Hearing this, a wave of profound relief washed over my mother. She wept into the receiver. "Thank you, dear. Please, just talk to her and bring my little girl back home safely, however you can." After hanging up, Rafat turned to me and tried desperately to reason with my anxious heart. "Mim, look at how much your mother is crying. She is worried sick about you. Please don't be stubborn. Let's go home. If your mother loses her temper or says anything at all, I promise I will take all the blame upon myself." But the terror inside me hadn't faded. I was trembling as I told him, "No, Rafat, I can't go back. If I go home, Mom will destroy me. And if my dad finds out, things will get so much worse. I was paralyzed with fear. But looking into Rafat's reassuring eyes and hearing his persistent pleas, I finally gave in. We set off together toward my apartment. When we finally stepped through the front door, a bizarre turn of events unfolded. I had braced myself for an absolute storm, but my mother was shockingly calm. She spoke to me quite normally and addressed Rafat with a surprisingly gentle tone. Seeing how responsibly he had taken charge and brought me home safely earned him a profound sense of trust and respect in my mother's eyes. From that evening onward, an incredibly warm relationship began to blossom between them. The irony of it all was that, to this day, my mother has no idea that the entire reason I skipped classes that afternoon was to see Rafat in the first place. She still believes that he was just a decent guy who happened to find me and safely brought me back home. Following that incident, Rafat and my mother started speaking on the phone quite often. Encouraged by her positive attitude, Rafat didn't waste any time. He shared everything with his own mother, telling her directly, "Mom, I deeply care about Mim, and she is the one I want to marry. Please, find a way to talk to her father." Finding no reason to object to her son's choice, his mother agreed. Since Rafat's father was working overseas at the time, his mother called him to discuss the matter. Seeing how crazily in love their son was, he also gave his blessings, saying, "If the boy is this persistent, why stand in his way? Go ahead and initiate the talk." Shortly after, my future mother-in-law sent a formal marriage proposal to my father. When my dad heard that the boy belonged to a known family and that we genuinely liked each other, he didn't hesitate for a moment and gave his full consent. On the other end, since my mother already adored Rafat, she was thrilled. It was mutually decided that during the upcoming holidays, when everyone returned to our ancestral village, our official marriage registry and legal paperwork would be completed. However, in the midst of all this planning, an irrational fear began to take hold of Rafat's mind. He became consumed by the anxiety that something might go wrong at the last minute, that a sudden obstacle might tear us apart. He was so plagued by this uncertainty that one day, he approached my mother and began pleading with her. He skillfully tried to win her over, saying, "Look, Auntie, everything between our families is already locked in. But my dad's return from overseas is going to take some time. Can we not just quietly do the legal registry right now? No one else needs to know. It can just be a secret among the three of us." Rafat was secretly terrified of losing me, and his desperation made him act a little frantic around my mother. Since my mother already loved him like her own son, and Rafat always listened to her advice, she couldn't bring herself to reject his heartfelt plea. She reasoned that since both families had already agreed, there was no harm in getting the legal paperwork out of the way. Ultimately, she agreed. With my mother's consent secured, we headed to the marriage registry office. While my mother gave her full permission, she didn't join us at the office herself. Instead, the only people present as witnesses were both of our maternal uncles, alongside the two of us. When it came time to write down the marriage contract and discuss the dower through financial commitment, made by the groom to the bride, my family requested a sum of 1 million local currency. Without a single second of hesitation, Rafat looked at me with a smile and said, "Mim, put down whatever amount you wish. I have absolutely no objections, and it is not an issue at all." And just like that, our legal marriage was finalized. Standing inside that quiet office as I put my signature on the official register, the emotion swelling up inside me was entirely beyond words. A wave of intense joy, overwhelming relief, and a beautiful, indescribable warmth washed over my entire being. Later on, I asked Rafat, "What were you thinking, making such a rash decision and convincing my mother on such short notice? We had a wonderful opportunity to have a proper family wedding. Why were you in such a rush?" Rafat confessed that since his father was working in Kuwait, his return to the country was going to be significantly delayed. He admitted he was paralyzed by an overwhelming fear of losing me, a deep insecurity that somehow things wouldn't work out. He figured that since both families were already on board, getting the legal marriage contract done early would secure our future. Once his father returned, we could host a grand, traditional ceremony without any complications. It was his desperate longing to hold on to me forever that drove his actions. But back then, neither of us could have foreseen just how incredibly complicated that single decision would make our lives. Since my father lived back in our quiet ancestral village, he had absolutely no idea about this secret marriage, and my mother hadn't breathed a word to him either. On one side, we were legally married, but the very next day, a massive storm broke out on the other side. My mother-in-law, Rafat's mom, suddenly decided to call my father. She told him, "Brother, we were thinking it would be best to get the legal marriage registration done now, since Rafat's father's return will be delayed. Besides, Rafat is still unemployed and completing his studies. He won't be able to bear Mim's living expenses just yet. Please don't hold this against him later on. Just give him a little time." Rafat's mother had spoken out of pure innocence. But the words deeply wounded my father's pride as a respected local council member and community leader. To him, it felt like the groom's family was already making excuses about financial irresponsibility before the wedding had even officially happened. Our secret marriage had taken place just one day prior, and by the next morning, this catastrophic misunderstanding unfolded. Furious, my father immediately dialed my mother. He told her in an icy, uncompromising voice, Mim's mother, that marriage discussion we had with Rafat's family about hosting the ceremony after the holidays? It's canceled. It's not happening anymore. And make sure Mim cuts off all communication with that boy instantly. Sensing that everything was spinning out of control, Rafat desperately confessed the truth to his own mother in a fit of emotion. He told her, "Mom, I've already married Mim. What on earth did you say to her father? He has completely rejected the alliance and is absolutely refusing to let this happen." Hearing his confession, his mother completely deflated. She said, "You went ahead and got married, son, but I cannot override your father's authority." The situation became suffocatingly tense. My father was stubbornly refusing to allow the marriage to proceed, while Rafat's father was expressing his bitter anger from overseas. Caught in the crossfire of two furious fathers, both of our mothers were left completely helpless because they secretly knew that the marriage was already legally binding. Amidst this chaos, the holy holidays arrived, and we all traveled back to our ancestral village in Barisha with our respective families. Since we arrived separately, we had to act like complete strangers in front of everyone. None of the villagers had any inkling that we were already legally husband and wife. One day, during the holidays, Rafat secretly sneaked me over to his house to meet his mother. The moment she saw me, my mother-in-law gifted me a gold chain, silently accepting me as her daughter-in-law. But our secret meetings couldn't keep the truth hidden for long. Slowly, whispers of our secret marriage began to carry through the village wind. Someone had found out and spread the rumor across the entire community. It reached a point where whenever people saw my father on the streets, they would approach him and say, "Councilman, the gossip on the streets is becoming unbearable. Everyone is saying your daughter is already married to Rafat. Do you really know nothing about this?" Eventually, the pressure became too much, and my father discovered the undeniable truth that our legal registry was already done. Discovering this ultimate truth unleashed a terrifying rage in my father, which he directed entirely at my mother. He shouted in absolute fury, "I will never bring this girl into my house again. She has dragged my honor and social standing through the mud. I will not allow her to step foot on my property ever again." The atmosphere at home became toxic and dangerous within seconds. When Rafat found out about the volatile situation at my house, he realized instantly that I was no longer safe there. Without losing a single moment, He came straight to my house and pulled me out of that environment. The moment we left, the local villagers wasted no time calling Rafat's father in Kuwait. They taunted him, saying, "The council member isn't going to let this go easily. Your son has run away with his daughter." This was a devastating blow to Rafat's father's self-respect. Hearing from thousands of miles away that his only son had eloped with a girl. As Rafat hurried me away, a massive wave of psychological pressure weighed heavily on us. Since my father was an incredibly influential local leader, we were terrified that a police case or severe legal retaliation could hit us at any second. Consumed by sheer panic, we initially took shelter at Rafat's maternal uncle's house. But realizing we weren't safe from my father's reach there either, we quickly fled the countryside and headed back toward the familiar sprawl of Dhaka, seeking refuge in the apartment of one of Rafat's relatives. Once we arrived in Dhaka and took shelter, the real war for survival began. The way both of us had been raised, the comfortable lifestyle we were used to, none of it matched the harsh reality we were suddenly thrown into. We had absolutely nothing, not even a spare thread to our names. We arrived in Dhaka completely zero, with entirely empty hands. The state of that tiny room we stayed in is something I cannot even begin to describe. To use the shared kitchen, there was a constant line of 10 to 15 people ahead of us, and we had to wait for our turn just to cook a basic meal. It was in that suffocating, crowded environment that our battle for survival commenced. Amidst this storm, my education came to an abrupt, permanent end. My master's degree remained unfinished. Rafat's studies were cut short halfway through as well. Every month, my mother and my mother-in-law would secretly slip us tiny amounts of money. But with the soaring cost of living, how could a household survive on such a meager pittance? Our days were spent in extreme financial distress. There were days when my mother-in-law would call from the village and ask, "Dear, what did you eat today?" I would put on a brave smile and reply over the line, "Mom, we had a full meal with expensive hilsa fish today." But the truth was, we hadn't eaten anything. We would just mix plain rice with a bit of salt and a drizzle of oil and share it between the two of us. There were even days when we didn't have a single onion in the house. During those times, Rafat would go down to the local grocery shop. He had a great relationship with the shopkeeper, so while chatting away, he would pretend to fidget with the onions. Making it look like playful, idle distraction, he would slide 2 or 3 onions into his pocket and bring them upstairs. Those few stolen onions were all we had to flavor our curry or mashed potatoes. Countless days passed just like that. Yet, that brutal phase taught us the true face of the world and reality. My father had been working in Kuwait for 32 long years. I had grown up surrounded by financial security since childhood, never knowing what true deprivation felt like. I used to have hundreds of friends, acquaintances, and relatives. I personally helped my friends so much, treated them to countless meals. No friend of mine was ever allowed to pay a bill in my presence. But when I got married and hit the absolute rock bottom of my life, I realized how selfish human nature truly is. The hunger was agonizing enough, but what hurt more was that not a single relative or friend kept even an ounce of contact with me. Everyone turned their backs on us. Day after day, we would feel annoying hunger, but there was absolutely nothing we could do. When our stomachs made hollow, strange noises from starvation, we wouldn't cry. Instead, we tried to lighten the mood. Hearing the noises, I would smile at Rafat and say, "Do you hear that? Look at the mice racing inside our stomachs." He would look at me, smile, and reply, "Yes, they are racing in your stomach and mine too." We would wrap our arms around each other and laugh, but beneath that laughter lay an ocean of unshed tears. We spent nearly a year in Dhaka enduring this extreme hardship. Right around that time, an unexpected miracle happened. Rafat's paternal grandmother, who was very elderly and fragile, suddenly fell severely ill and called my father-in-law in Kuwait. Weeping over the phone, she told him, "Son, I could pass away at any moment. Before I die, I want to see my grandson's wife just once. Do this for me. The holy holidays are approaching. Accept them. I want to see them and close my eyes in peace." My father-in-law respected his mother deeply. Even though he was an incredibly stubborn and hot-tempered man, he could not reject his mother's final wish. He called the village from Kuwait and instructed, "Fine, bring them both home." But we didn't have the courage to show up in the village entirely on our own. So my father-in-law specifically sent my maternal grandmother, a respected elder in the family, to Dhaka, grandmother, traveled all the way to the city and brought us back to our ancestral village with dignity. We made it to my father-in-law's house, but our mental anguish didn't end upon arrival. My father-in-law still refused to speak to us directly. There was virtually no communication between us. If he chanced upon us, he would only mutter the absolute bare minimum in a cold, detached tone. We were both still completely unemployed without a single penny in our own pockets. But living in a household, you still have personal expenses for basic necessities like soap, oil, or personal grooming. For those tiny expenses, we constantly had to look toward my mother-in-law's hands for help. The deepest pain of all was that despite traveling from Dhaka back to my own ancestral soil, I couldn't step foot inside my own father's house. My father still hadn't forgiven me. He had completely disowned me. My father-in-law had at least granted us shelter because of his mother's words. But my own father's doors were permanently locked against me. So, I made a silent vow to myself no matter what it took. I had to win over my father-in-law's heart and earn his affection. Then came the year 2020, and our lives were blessed with the birth of a beautiful baby girl. Yet, even that joyful day was shadowed by a bitter truth. When my daughter was born, we didn't have enough money to cover the cost of my cesarean section. The immense struggle my mother and my mother-in-law went through to pull that money together is something I will remember for the rest of my life. Meanwhile, my own father could have comfortably covered the cost of 50 such surgeries with the snap of his fingers. But he had grown so hardened against me that he didn't contribute a single penny. Even though she was his very first grandchild, he refused to lay eyes on her. My mother tried desperately to bridge the gap. Whenever my father would video call my mother from overseas, she would quickly turn the camera toward my baby girl and say, Look at your granddaughter." But my father was so unyielding that the moment the camera panned toward her, he would instantly avert his gaze, refusing to catch even a fleeting glimpse of his own flesh and blood. During those dark and financially draining days, I noticed a girl living next door to us who was selling clothes from her home, using a business model we call e-commerce, or online business. Watching her operate from afar deeply fascinated me. I kept thinking how amazing it would be if I could start a small venture right from our room. But as much as I wanted to, a nagging question kept echoing in my mind. Where would I ever get the capital? You need money to start a business, and we had absolutely nothing. Right then, a door opened for me in the most unexpected way. When my daughter was born, many local villagers came to see her, and following our tradition, they gifted her small amounts of cash. I saved every single penny given to my baby girl, and when I counted it all up, I realized I had about 17 to 18,000 in local currency. I decided right then that this money would be my very first capital. I was going to start my own dress business. I ordered a small batch of clothes from Dhaka, stored them in our room, and began selling them. My mother-in-law supported me tremendously during this time. Whenever I had to focus on managing my pages or packing orders, she would hold and protect my little daughter. My sister-in-law was equally supportive, always encouraging me by saying, "Keep going, sister. We are right here with you." Shortly after this, my father-in-law returned from Kuwait to settle down permanently in our home country. His return brought a massive responsibility to our household because my elderly grandmother-in-law required round-the-clock care. She was a very frail elder who passed away about a year ago. But during the final days of her life, I poured my entire heart and soul into nursing her, staying up day and night by her side. Both she and my maternal grandmother-in-law had worked tirelessly behind the scenes to get us accepted back into the family. So during her final months, I took care of her feeding, medication, and every comfort as if she were my own mother. My selfless care and dedication melted the icy exterior of my strict father-in-law. Watching from a distance, he saw that the very girl he had once rejected had become his mother's greatest comfort and anchor. This realized truth created a deep, soft spot for me in his heart. Slowly but surely, he began to accept us. He finally picked up my daughter, looked into her eyes, and broke down. After all, blood is blood, and holding his own granddaughter sparked an overwhelming wave of affection inside him. As my father-in-law's heart softened, my own father also began to relent. Erasing years of stubborn pride and distance, the doors finally reopened, and I began visiting my own father's house again. Then, both of our fathers came together and made an incredible historic decision. They said, "We had so many dreams for our children. We wanted to throw them a massive wedding. No matter what happened in the past, we are going to throw a grand, traditional celebration for them now." And so, blessedly, 6 long years after our legal marriage registry, our formal wedding ceremony took place with our 3-year-old daughter standing right there beside us. We hosted a massive wedding reception for nearly 800 to 900 guests. The entire neighborhood watched in absolute awe. No one in the area had ever witnessed a couple celebrating their formal wedding with their own child in their arms. The air was filled with pure joy and a sense of triumph. Following that grand celebration, the relationships within our extended family transformed into something beautiful and harmonious. My father's old anger and pride melted away so completely that he proudly declared to everyone, "As long as I am breathing, you two will not spend a single penny on my granddaughter's upbringing. Her education, her expenses, and her entire future are completely on me." The same father who once refused to even look at her through a video call had now made her the absolute center of his universe. Meanwhile, my online clothing business began expanding rapidly day by day. Our growth was so massive that, combining a small fund provided by my father-in-law with our own saved capital, we opened our very first physical retail showroom in the heart of Barishal City. Our revenues skyrocketed to the point where, within just a single month of online profits, we bought ourselves a brand new motorcycle, a stunning contrast for a couple who once didn't have a single coin for personal expenses. Climbing this ladder of success, we eventually shifted our base back to the familiar landscape of Dhaka. Today, we successfully run 2 major businesses. We own a large retail showroom on the 4th floor of the Belief Builders Market in New Market, which we named Bongo Bazaar. There, we import high-quality products directly from China to sell on both a wholesale and retail scale. Alongside that, I continue to nurture my first love, my original dress business page, Humera Fashion House. Through this platform, I proudly sell authentic, traditional boutique wear and cotton apparel. That tiny online page was where my journey began with completely empty hands. And today, it is the very place that transformed our entire reality. What started as a desperate battle from absolute zero has blossomed into a thriving empire built on resilience, success, and unconditional love. It is often said that the hardest battles yield the sweetest victories. Looking back at that tiny, suffocating room in Dhaka, the days of sharing a single plate of salted rice, and the painful silence from the fathers who disowned them, It is clear that every tear was a building block for the empire they own today. Mim and Rafat's story didn't end in tragedy. It ended with their 3-year-old daughter watching her parents walk down the aisle in front of 900 people, celebrating a love that broke down the walls of stubborn pride. Have a story to share? We'd be honored to tell it. Send it to us via email. The address is in the description below. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that modern loneliness can be conquered with raw resilience, please let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to True Love Diaries for more incredible real-life journeys. Until next time, keep believing in love.